and we were talking about how Biden no different from Trump. We can go down and listen. Zenkus did a great job at that. And one of the many examples of this is the issue that the boutique left that endorsed Joe Biden pretends to care about. Cuba and being anti-imperialist in general. Cuba says Biden applies blockade even more aggressively than its predecessors. Increased funding to apartheid, genocidal Zionists in Israel. So let me get this straight, Bernie Sanders and the Bernie Sanders love. You guys want us to throw Cubans and Palestinians under the bus? Haitians under the bus after Biden's policies? In what universe is this guy the lesser of two evils, right? Aggressive neocon that took every single Trump policy and doubled down on it. Even hired Elliot Abrams, the Iran and Venezuela envoy from Donald Trump, who famously tried to overthrow Venezuela. And they pulled out an Iran deal that escalated tensions. And they had a tough, hardline stance on Iran that Donald Trump did. And this is why people who think he's anti-empire is ridiculous. He was as big as an empire stamp you can get. And Joe Biden essentially copied his policy on Iran.
And you know what? And Nick, I'll just say this real quick. You know what was nefarious about Elliot was the fact that that got no coverage in the sense of Biden kind of slipped that through overnight. Fortunately we happened to hear about it, but there was nothing, in terms of, really barely anything in mainstream media in regards to that, because my guess is they knew that was not going to be popular, especially among activists who really were against that. So they had to slip that in the middle of the night when it was not convenient for the rest of us to know in order to make that claim. So just to kind of show how nefarious Biden is in, essentially hiring the same hacks under Bush, of all people. So I just had to say that, just in a way, we say the Democrats are the lesser evil. No, as we say, they're more effective because they're able to get a lot more shit done that is more in tune of what the military industrial complex and all these corporations want versus what the people want.
You have this example. Joe Biden is just like Donald Trump expanding empire. There's no difference between how empire acts between presidents, and this is one of the greatest examples. And now the Biden administration is actually giving one of the biggest tells. Neocons are giving one of the biggest tells, exposing their own hypocrisy. What do we say on RBN all the time? Weaponized hypocrisy is the highest form of corruption. And they are telling on their foreign policy right now. What did I tell you guys? The way they talk about their enemies is how we should talk about them. The way they call Vladimir Putin a war criminal, authoritarian thug. No, Joe Biden's a war criminal, authoritarian thug. That's how I refer to him. That's how we should refer to him. The way that they are melting down, and China just having relationships with countries in our hemisphere shows exactly why their foreign policy is unhinged. And they know that it's unhinged because they're complaining that China simply having ties with Cuba is a security concern. So here's the headline, and there's a few examples of this. I'm going to show you guys a crazy Fox News clip. It's not long. It's only a 3-minute clip. So listen to this. China's ties to Cuba and growing presence in Latin America raise security concerns in Washington, even as leaders try to ease tensions. So I have a question for you guys. So China, working with Cuba, doing military drills in Cuba, that's a security concern. But NATO encroachment on the Russian border is not?
Right.
Explain to me how that made so China having any sort of relationships in Latin America. Look, it wasn't even just Cuba. They said and growing presence in Latin America. So China can't do anything in Latin America. So according to you guys, isn't United States presence in Taiwan a security concern for China?
Right.
You gotta see how they tell on themselves. And now this is another example. And if you read all these articles, no one ever brings up this obvious blatant hypocrisy. Look at this. This is from the Hill. Cuba and China are a hemispheric security threat. So China building roads, forgiving debts, and strengthening relations because they are a giant growing economy, that's bad. But arming violent neo-Nazis next to a border of a nuclear power is not.
You have to understand, what do they mean by security threat? Capitalist means threatening their capital is a security threat for them.
Yeah.
When most people read that as a physical threat by military powers, that's what most regular people in the ruling class knows that most people believe that and don't understand that's not what they mean. They know that, and they don't take the time to clear it up. Go ahead, Nick.
And now this is from John Bolton. Another Trump hiree, the guy who's going to drain the swamp. the guy who's going to drain the swamp hired John Bolton, according to MAGA people. China's potential military training facility in Cuba is a red flag to America. It could camouflage offensive weapons along with many other risks we simply cannot tolerate. It's a significant escalation in China's hegemonic aspirations, equal to or graver than the 1960s Soviet presence. One thing is certain, we should not stand idly by. Now, the obvious, funny conclusion from this is you can literally copy and paste this regarding Ukraine and NATO in a statement. Mm-hmm. Because when Russia says that NATO encroachment on their border, the organization responsible for genocide and destabilizing Africa, it's not like they're fucking peace activists over there at NATO. They got a bad track record. They got Nazis in their organization that was implemented, right? So what John Bolton and what the neocons would say, they would say, oh my God, if you say that Russia had any security concerns in Ukraine, you're spreading Putin propaganda. That's ridiculous. Why would any Russian feel threatened by NATO or any arms deal being going on in Ukraine? That's being arming Nazis. Why would anyone be upset about that? But here, John Bolton being upset at something that's way less threatening. So here's friend of the show, Caitlin Johnstone. She says, compare the way U.S. empire managers shriek at the faintest whispers of the possibility of a Chinese military training facility in Cuba with their self-righteous indignation at the suggestion that Russia and China have any business opposing U.S. activities in Ukraine and Taiwan. Which is, U.S. propaganda and U.S. imperialism is so absurd, they don't even have the answer to this obvious hypocrisy that they have.